the softball team called the Olympiats. I think the other teams were called the Totem Poles. There were a few other Massachusetts and New England teams and New York teams that played softball literally in the Boston Garden at the time. I can't imagine how this happened. I haven't been able to find some articles from Maddy English's scrapbook that they both played for the Olympiats for a couple years. And at one of the games that was in Madison Square Garden was how they got noticed and invited to try out for the All-American. So this is actually from the Boston Globe, but a lot of the stuff is also from Maddy English's scrap. So let me just share a little bit about each individual and what they advocated for and how they advocated. So as part of Mary Pratt's collection, this is a self-published book that's in our collection. I would say it's probably 100 pages long. And she sort of published it in 2001, talked a lot about her life and sort of really reflected on her life. She lived to be 101 years old, by the way. So there's actually an interview with her in our archives when she was like 99. She was sharp as a tack. She really felt that after she played in the All-American, she contributed so much in her 48-year teaching career. I mean, I've been doing this 25 years and I'm tired already, but 48-year teaching career. Just let that sink in for a second. Anyway, so within her book, there are a couple key ideas I want to share with you before I move on. One of them was she reflected on why, and this is a quote from her, why it has taken me well over 60 years to realize the role I have played in the history of baseball, in particular women's professional baseball. Found that to be really interesting. She also had a philosophy of coaching and teaching, which I think is sort of ahead of her time. She thought that athletes should make decisions and that coaches should sort of stay out of it during game time, which I thought was, she thought that male coaches specifically do too much of the decision making in the games. And I think that's interesting as well. For years and years, she coached. She even applied for some men's sports coaching jobs early on in her career because she realized women were expected to do the coaching for free and the men were being paid. So she really tells stories in this book about her life and her career. From her scrapbook, this sort of gives you just an idea of what the scrapbooks look like if you've not seen them before. They are tremendous resources. This is like a hand-carved cover. They all have these unbelievable wood covers. This one's signed by, looks like, a lot of the peaches. Some of them have, you can see some images here of them, the players just relaxing, swimming, but also there's game pictures and a lot of newspaper clippings. So we started digitizing some of these scrapbooks, but they're quite difficult to digitize. They're large and they're sort of falling apart. So we're working on that. You can see that we've taken this one apart. So you can kind of see that there are some, we took it apart to be able to digitize it. So in terms of Mary Pratt's advocacy, and this is just a partial list of what she did outside of her All-American career. As I mentioned before, she taught for 48 years. That's a long time. She was really active in officiating in New England, both basketball and softball. She also started a ASA softball team, and we have a few uniforms from the Quincy Raiderettes. In fact, she and her mother, I guess, sewed these uniforms. They look very much like the uniforms from the All-American, same style. He became an archivist for our our statewide Physical Education Association. She began the New Agenda Northeast, which still recognizes tremendous female athletes in the Northeast. Actually went to their brunch last year. And she was on the All-American Board of Directors, and then she had a project, what she called the Out and About Project, connecting All-American players to each other. Before the reunions really got rolling. That was a piece of what she did as well. Okay, now I'll talk about Maddy English for a few minutes, and then I'll have time for questions for sure. So as you can see, here's one of Maddy's scrapbooks. Same sort of cover, like handmade cover. This one has a dog on it. The couple pages I was going to show from Maddy's scrapbook partly relate to the 1947 spring break training trip to Cuba. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting when watching this VHS interview with Maddy English and Mary Pratt after many, many years is that Mary Pratt said about Maddy English that Maddy played ball like it was going out of style. So Maddy was a 3-time All-Star, and she was known to be like really chill in person, but really fierce on the field. And yeah, so let me just show you a couple pictures from the spring break trip. And then I have a tremendous resource that's a letter that she wrote home from her materials. I was just going to read a few sentences from when we get there. So this is from Maddy's scrapbook, Spring Training in Havana in 1947, which was another one of the themes that I'm thinking about as I research the All-American players, just what a tremendous experience it was for them to leave home, meet people from all over the country, travel, have opportunities that they would not have had had they not been playing in the All-American. And I think this picture is really cool too. So let me show you in the Maddy English collection. I know you can't really read this very well, so I apologize. There are not, and which I wish there were sort of like diaries or things like that from the players. We do not have that, but letters are really cool, and there's just so much material that we haven't even gone through yet. But this, I wanted to read you this one piece from Maddy's letter in 1947, just the excitement of the travel and what she did there. She says, "Dear folks, sorry it's taken me so long to write, but there's so much to do and so much to see that our time is all taken up. I'll tell you everything that has happened since I left home. It would take me pages and pages to do this, but I will tell you all the highlights. We met a lot of kids along the way, the train through New York. Every stop we made, we picked up a few more kids, so we really had a swell time. When we went through Florida, there was a lot of white sand and palm trees. When we arrived in Miami, Gosling met us and we were taken to the airport in a bus." And I'm just going to skip a little bit ahead. She talks about the cost of coffee and beer and the fact that they weren't allowed to drink the water. So it sounds like they drank a lot of coffee and beer and soda, Coke as well. But anyway, the part I wanted to share with you, I'll show you on the next slide here as well, is the part where she writes to her sister. "Sister, wait until you hear what happened. You'll be so surprised. The first night here, we went to eat. While sitting there, I saw this man I knew, when all of a sudden it dawned on me that it was none other than Jimmy Fox. I leaped up from my table and went over to introduce myself and said I was from Boston. He said Max Carey had told him all about our league. We talked all about the times he played first for the Red Sox and how happy he was they won the pennant. By the time we were finished talking, Jimmy and I were old pals. He's managing a club from Florida. They were playing in Havana, Cuban's baseball team. Jimmy certainly got older looking. I told him how my sister and I used to watch him play, and then I can't read the rest. Jimmy invited me out to dinner the next night, but of course we couldn't go. We had a meeting every night, and besides, we can't go out alone with anyone, no matter who he is. Meeting and talking with Jimmy Fox was worth the whole trip to Havana. This trip is a world of experience in itself. I could go on telling you things page after page, but as I better close now and write later. Love to everyone. Hasta la vista, Maddy." So I thought that that's just a tremendous, sort of reflection and as part of our collection of what it felt like to be traveling and playing. In terms of the advocacy of Maddy English, she also had quite a long teaching career. But after she finished playing, she waited out her amateur status and started and played for a team called the Caggiano All-Star Club in Lynn. For many years, she unlike Mary Pratt, she went to school in the evenings, and took her quite a while to get her degree because she was still playing. She was both a classroom teacher, physical education teacher, and also a guidance counselor as part of her career. And there was a school named after her in Everett, which is quite an honor. And so in 2003, the Maddy English School, and it was a contest, I guess, partly it had a name it. It was like an 8th grade girl who wrote an essay about Maddy and why she thought the school should be named after her, that I thought was like really cool. And she also was really engaged and active in recreational programs in Everett, her hometown. Okay. So I have a couple minutes left just to talk about some of the things I've been thinking about as part of my analysis. And I have some old patches on this slide from Boston University Sargent College, but also the Bridgewater State. Bridgewater is well known in New England for having a very old physical education department, especially for women, that um, merged with the Hyannis campus during World War II as well. But anyway, one of the things I've been thinking about in terms of the post competition life for Maddy English and Mary Pratt was how did they both deal with the contradiction of being such competitors, but in physical education, they were trained to be non competitive. And they were told, even by some of the Sargent professors, Mary Pratt talks about this, that you're supposed to put your competitive self to the side. And it was, there were a lot of like philosophies about women in physical education, particularly, but they were not to bring that to their students. And I thought that was interesting. And then, of course, the question many I know scholars have asked and grapple with in terms of like, why did it take these women so long to realize that they were trailblazers and made really a big impact on not only women but also our culture in general. And so those are some of the questions I'm still thinking about as I go on. So my last slide here is just some of the things that I'm doing on our campus, and I invite you to engage with. That is, we're going to have an exhibit, both in person and virtual, in the springtime to highlight some of our collections. So it's not going to be a huge online part of the exhibit, but there will be some materials that we will put on an online exhibit. And then March 2nd, I invite you to come to Bridgewater for Women's History Month, sort of kickoff a conference, Women in Baseball. So sort of in the planning stages of that, but that's where hoping to share some of my work. And then I hope in the spring also to go to the North American Society for Sport History and present some of the other pieces of my project. The piece that I'm very, very excited about and um, I didn't include here is that I hope to make an educational board game that aligns with the national high school standards for World War II and make it available to history teachers and also to use at the university level. So I'm really working on that as well, but I thought that this was probably a good fit for this conference. So thank you all for uh, engaging and letting me present here, and I'll stop sharing.
All right. It looks like we have a lot of comments. So really
Okay.
a lot of engagement from everybody just about the artifacts, the handwriting. We have a question from Ryan Woodward. So the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League emphasized having a feminine image so players wouldn't be perceived as tomboys or gay or lesbian. Is there evidence of this push toward a feminine image either in their pre-league playing days or their post-league coaching and teaching careers?
Good question, Ryan. Good to see you. Um, yeah, I've been grappling with this as well. A lot, Susan Kahn's book and a lot of the other people who have written, but then also listening to the voices of the players, right? Like in the videos, and um, it seems that they personally didn't seem too worried about being called a tomboy. They went out and did what they did. They put up with, sort of the uniforms and most, sometimes even made fun of the charm school piece and things they had to do. Um, but I also, interestingly, have really been looking through a lot of the pictures in the scrapbooks. And there are some pictures from like 46, 47 of women wearing slacks. And I'm like, oh my goodness, they're actually wearing slacks. And I think that in terms of Mary Pratt and Maddy English, that Mary Pratt was like super rule follower. Like when you hear her talk or read things she's written, she'll say things like, well, of course, we weren't supposed to go to bars or drink or do anything like that. So I didn't do it. I went home and I, wrote in my diary, and I suppose some people snuck out and did other things, but she was like, you know, that was not, happening. Um, so I think we have to look at the feminine image kind of in the context too of what what was typical at the time. But I have found some really cool stuff in Maddy English's pictures as well that sort of lead me to think that there was a little more leeway in terms of these women feeling more comfortable in their own skin and when they were off the field and dressing in ways that, according to Susan Kahn's work, would be sort of a lesbian code, like slacks and big shoes, kinds of things. So I'm definitely grappling with that and trying to use the context of what life was like at that time. I don't know if that helps answer your question, but
All right, and we have a second one from Gary Belleville. So he wanted to know if there are any digitized images from the scrapbooks available online, and if so, is there a URL you can share?
yes, that's a good question, Gary. I do have a finding aid that tells you what we have from each. A lot of the stuff is not digitized and publicly available yet. We are sort of grappling with like sort of how we're going to do that. We do have an archive space site, and then our own library site. We have a digital commons section, and that's where I'm going to put our digital exhibit is in digital commons because then it will stay. It can be adjusted and like revised, but it would stay there and it'd be housed there. I was debating having a separate website that I would make. And then I just thought about the upkeep of that over time, and I'd rather have it housed within the library structure itself. So I can share links to our finding aids so you can see exactly, which scrapbooks and things we have, but there aren't too many things that are available yet to access.
So far, those are all the questions we have in the chat. Anybody else have any other questions for Maura before we close out? Raise your hand, throw them in the chat, or forever hold your peace. All right, well, that was a great presentation. Leslie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. That was great, everybody. I'm checking to see if I have missed, but I don't see our next speaker. Kel, are you here? And I'm just missing you. Got a couple minutes, so they may be joining us. I'm not seeing our next speaker, so hopefully we'll be joining us momentarily. So we've still got a couple minutes then. So if there's questions that anybody, Maura, I was curious, how did you, so as a sociologist, right, thinking about all of this, I'm curious because as a historian, right, we look at things in a particular way. A sociologist is going to bring a different lens. And so I'm curious what you see as sort of the big differences your discipline will bring to what you're doing.
Yeah, I've sort of struggled with that a little bit because I also feel a little bit out of my depth because I was not trained to be looking at and analyzing, primary source materials. And, so I've had to sort of catch myself in terms of I've spent most of my career studying post Title IX female athletes. So I've had to really adjust my own thinking in terms of, well, why didn't the All-American players ask to unionize? Why didn't they ask for better working conditions? They played 125 games a year, and I really have to check my sort of hat of like big social structures of like and look at the context of, they were making more money than many of their fathers were making. They were having this tremendous experience. They were young and loving the freedom of like what they were doing. So I think I usually as a sociologist, are thinking these big structural pieces, which I can still do here, but I guess I wanted to really recognize the voices and experiences of the women themselves instead of just look at them as one big group. So I've been trying to read and listen to like some of the oral histories that have been published and look at our own collections just to try to understand individual experiences of the women. So I guess that, I don't know, that's kind of, and I've taken a couple classes too on sort of like digital archives and things like that to, help by making sense of this material. Who paid for and why did they go to Cuba? The league paid for it, I think. They went to I mean, the Cubans loved it. Um, they also, I think the Dodgers were there and another MLB team were there. They got 20 or 30,000 people. I don't know, Kat, you go ahead. I can't hear you. Oh, you're. Um, so anyway, that's what I know of the Cuban trip.
Do you have a favorite piece of some of the stuff that you've been researching or photo that you've seen so far?
Oh, well, we have Maddy English's uniform. I've tried to put it on. It's so small. Like I am 5'1", you can't tell. I'm 5'1", and I'm just like a solid person. Been tiny, and she could run and hit the ball. Like anyway, the uniform is tremendous, and we do have a replica that the archivist he lets me wear that sometimes. So like once a semester, I'll show up to class in the replica, and my students are like, they think it's cool, even though they act like they think I'm out to lunch. But I really like, we have a we have Mary Pratt. We have a game glove and cleats from Mary Pratt, which are really cool. The images are just amazing. Some of the pictures, I do have some favorite pictures that are just amazing. In fact, the Dottie Green collection is just something I'm just starting to look at, and because my hometown is Natick, Massachusetts, and that's also Dottie Green's hometown. So I've gone to the archives here. We went to the same high school, so I'm kind of fascinated by Dottie just for that reason. Um, so I'm interested in kind of getting into those pieces. I realized I had promised the stars, the moon, and the sun to get this fellowship, and I realized I needed to narrow down my analysis. So the New England players who were also teachers are going to be my first step, and then from there, I want to definitely look at Dottie Green as I have time.
Looks like there's a question about any surprises that you found.
Oh, um, I don't know about surprises, but there's some really cool. Um, yeah, there's some really cool, like the rules, their contracts and the rules that are in the collection about what they could and couldn't do. And in the Helen Nordquist collection, she played later in the 50s, and she died just 2 years ago in New Hampshire. And her collection, I mean, she did so much work towards the All American website and the statistics. She wrote to so many former players. I mean, she gave boxes and boxes of her correspondence. She was so detailed in terms of helping fill in any of the gaps for the people that were doing the All American website. Um, they were so dedicated to like some of the things like that have really surprised me what she kept. And we've processed. I spent a lot of time last summer sort of processing the Helen Nordquist collection. There's a richness of really caring about the making sure all the rosters were correct and whatever obituaries we found and that kind of stuff. So that's been really cool to see. Um, the board game. I really want to talk about the board game. Yeah, so uh, I just have sort of I'm not even at kind of have a prototype that I just made out of, you know, scissors and paper, and I'm working to really get a good prototype to share with folks. And I want to make it freely available, like a PDF you could print and do yourself. I will print some copies once it's good enough, but um that's my plan anyway. I feel like I'll do a prototype myself, and then I'll hire some real artists to make it look nice. You know what I mean? I'll make the gameplay. I'll do all that myself, but then I'll hire some people who know how to make the game look good. And I will print X number of copies and share them. But then my idea would be to share it and have it be free and fair use, and history teachers could download and make their own copy. I don't think there's a game that's out there that's similar to that, and I want it to align with uh, those standards. Especially, I'll also have like a bunch of lesson plans for high school and university teachers of how to use the primary source materials in their own teaching. So that'll kind of go along with the game. That's my plan, so that people will use the materials we do have. Um, yeah, 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 Cecilia. Yeah. You're still on mute though. Can't.
I'm sorry.
There you
I
go.
taught PE for 40 years in the DC public schools, and never did any of this information cross our desk, our path, nothing. I could have shared with the kids. I shared what I had from my past with the kids. I even had them wear my college uniform that I played on the boys varsity team in one of our show and tell things on Black History Week, and had them put my uniform on. We were playing statues, and one of them was holding a bat as a statue until I called baseball. Then they'd come forward and swing, and I'd say a little bit about baseball. But none of this information. It's like I was living under a rock, and I kind of sort of have been, as well as being in the closet. So, but still, this got to come down to the elementary level. I taught on the elementary level, but they got a heck of a education and phys ed from me. I mean, anything and everything. I told them the truth about life, and what their potentials could be, and how some of them will be, and some of them, have potential and whatnot. But to share this information with them, I would have loved to have done. And if it wasn't for my illness, I'd have still been teaching. And I'm 74 now. And I'd have still been teaching, because it's just the love of and educating and seeing somebody light up when they find out they can actually catch a ball, or they can actually throw a ball, and learn how to pivot and learn how to put that opposite leg forward. So how can this information get down to the underprivileged areas, and the elementary areas? Because these kids are very talented in elementary now.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Absolutely.
curious.
Thanks for sharing that. That's great. I just got back. Yeah, go ahead, Kat. Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to put in a little commercial. You're going to hear a lot more from Cece at 2:45 today when she's on my Tell Your Baseball Story panel. It's quite a story. So come back.
Cool.
Looks like we have a couple more questions. Have you considered presenting at SHAPE?
Yes and no. I mean, not for this year, but I would love to in the future. And in terms of the elementary, levels, I mean, if this game comes out the way I hope, I don't know why I couldn't make it a simpler version for elementary um, age students. I actually just got back from the Library of Congress. I was in DC last till Tuesday this week, and really they could have better collections of women in sport in general. I don't know why it surprised me that they didn't have the best, because but um, but I think I totally agree that this is a history that needs to be present of mind, um, and part of curriculum much more. Part of the Kathleen Bertrand and Linda Lundin, they really want a required course at Bridgewater for everybody to take about women's sport history, which is a great idea, but it's just probably not going to happen. But I have created some new courses, and I will be creating a course just pretty much on the All-American, but also on the Negro Leagues, um, that is part of the fellowship. I've also promised that. So that'll be something else I'll do in the spring.
See, and then just kind of a general question. Do we know how many of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League players are still alive?
I think there's about just slightly over 20. And there are some that have not been located. So they're always a little unsure of those numbers. But of the 600 who played originally, on the outside, we're probably looking at 25, 26, something like that. But it's a little bit of a guess. It seems that every month or so we go through another one of those great losses. I was wanting to ask another question or make a suggestion. Are you familiar with the 9 Spring Training Conference?
I think I got an email about that just recently. Like,
Is
yeah.
David or Willie on?
Is that yeah.
the 9 spring training, you probably did get an email because they're very
think I did.
connected. This is, it's in early March. It is one of the single best conferences that you can go to. It's not huge. It's in Arizona every year, and it is, of course, during spring training. If there are folks on here who are even more familiar than I am, it is really, it is a place to present your work, Maura, that you're going to get a lot of good feedback, a lot of good questions. There's never any, it's, you're in academia, you know what some of those conferences can be like, right? And this,
I do.
yeah, this is not. And in fact,
Cool. Okay.
those are some of the most amazing people I have gotten to know through the world of baseball. I would encourage you to think about it, reach out to David, maybe even take a look at the email and register. And there's
It's in
always,
early March.
it's in
So
early March. There's
it might
always,
conflict with your conference that you're talking about, so you might want for this upcoming year, but and they have a journal as well if you're looking to publish anything too.
right.
I think I found some of the articles from their journal. That's why, and then the email had the same like logo, and I was like, oh, that must be,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and just go, and if you can't find it, we can help with that too, but
Thank you.
there's always at least 2 days of field research while you're there, and that takes
Nice.
place at a ball game, so you just can't go wrong with that, right?
Right. Well, thank you so much.
Um, I was curious. You had mentioned that you use your sources in your classroom, and with your students. Could you tell us a little bit about how you do that, and how the students have responded, and how that interaction has worked?
Absolutely. I took a course in teaching with digital archives like a couple of years ago. So I have sort of worksheets that are freely available from the National Archives. You can adjust them yourself. So like the first time I bring students in, um, I use not only our collections, but also the yearbooks. So everyone who teaches at a university could do this. Usually you have yearbooks from your school that are from the 20s or 30s or earlier. So I do an activity where, let's say we looked at the 1923 yearbook, which is digitized. So not every student has to have a copy of it, but we might look at that. And I have them pick a picture or an activity that seems interesting to them and kind of do this worksheet, like make friends with the picture. What do you notice? What questions would you have about it? What do you think's going on? Like, I mean, pretty simple about a primary source material, but then we try to connect it to the context of what's going on in collegiate sport or activity at the time. And how can we understand this better looking at the context? So the first kind of visit would be, let's just take a look at some of the things that we have and try to understand them. And then the next visit to the archives, I would do a lesson where I would have, let's say, 4 or 5 items on different tables. So we would have to split the class up into 2 groups, and they would explore the materials, and I would have a series of questions similar to what they already did in terms of trying to understand the images and context. Um, and then I've had all kinds of projects. My favorite one, though, regarding the All American that students loved was after we learned all about the All American and the materials we had, and they saw one of their choices for their final project was to either write a letter home as if they were a player for the All American, or write like a newspaper article about their experiences. And I'm telling you, and then they did this as a final project. Then they got up and read them to the class. And I said, use your creativity, right? It's not like factual. You're using what you know about the league and at the time. And these women were away from home for the first time. Plus, they were around the same age as my students, right? So I'm telling you the ways that they understood some of these experiences by writing this fictitious letter home from the All American was one of the best assignments I've given in the last many years. It came out so well. Um, so those are just some examples of some of the things. I have a lot of materials and I'm happy to share in terms of the lessons and stuff. My ultimate goal is, I don't know if you've seen, the Library of Congress has this incredible teaching section. They have a whole lesson on Jackie Robinson, so I would love to share some of my materials I met with someone at the Library of Congress this week to have a lesson or two in there about the All-American or about women who played in the Negro Leagues. There are a few things about Toni Stone and Mamie Peanut Johnson in the Library of Congress, but not a lot. So I would love to have a place to put some of those lessons that teachers can just take and use.
That's really sounds amazing, and exactly the kinds of things we need to be doing to get this to Cece's point about not hearing about these kind of things, right? Raising the awareness wherever we can, and certainly if you're not familiar with the Library of Congress's materials, it is very cool, and certainly open for lots and lots of expansion in both areas, Negro Leagues and women's baseball, as you rightly point out, and the overlaps with the women who were involved in both. So